Hey, welcome back, guys. Hope you had a good weekend. Hope everybody got that take-home test in. Hope it wasn't too brutal. Today, our lecture for Monday, April 20th, we're going to be starting my favorite topic of any kind of history, Cold War. I love the Cold War. I think it is fascinating. It is just this 50-year chess match and this stare down. And I love it. I think it's fascinating. Now, while you're watching this, there's a decent chance I'm either getting in the process of getting my wisdom teeth yanked out or in recovery of it. Don't know how it's going to go. I didn't want anesthesia because I don't want to have someone drive me home. So I'm going to be conscious the whole time. We'll see how that goes. I'm sure they'll numb it somehow, but I don't know. It doesn't sound like a ton of fun. So, but I'll get that taken care of, and we'll still have a lecture for tomorrow. I'll just pre-record that. Uh, so for you guys, business as usual. Not too much will change. So we start the Cold War. Let's get some background first. Let's go back actually before World War II ends. So in early 1945, the Allies were in position to win. It was more of a case of when, not if, they would win. The big three leaders of the Allies, Churchill, Stalin, and FDR, they meet at Yalta, which is a place in modern Ukraine, which at the time was a part of the Soviet Union. And there they each lay out their, I guess you can call them a list of demands from each other. In those demands, the U.S. requests that the Soviet Union declare war on Japan, which they eventually do. The Soviets say we will once once we win in Europe and once our soldiers have left Europe. So that's what the U.S. requests, and Churchill and Britain request that the Soviet Union allows for free elections in Eastern Europe after this is all over. Let the people choose what government they want in Poland and Czechoslovakia and Austria and Yugoslavia. And elections are held, and we'll see how those go. And then Stalin demands that they divide Germany up, but that the Soviet Union gets the eastern part of Germany, as well as most of Eastern Europe, as a defense barrier against the rest of Europe. So Yalta, they agree to divide Germany and govern it together. You can see there how Germany is split. You have the Soviet area right here, Eastern Germany, and then you have the British zone, the American zone, and then a little French piece there. Now, it doesn't seem like it's overly unfair, but the Soviets have the most important city in Germany, which is Berlin. Berlin's the capital. It's the most populated. It's the economic center. It's the social center. Like, it's the most important city by far. So the Allies say, well, you can't just give us none of it. So they split Berlin up too. But they split it in half, as you can see in the little cutout there in the bottom left of that map. Berlin is split in half, with the eastern half being all Soviet and the western half being divided into thirds. You have the American portion, the English portion, the French portion. Now, their individual stakes don't really mean anything. They all kind of have a similar vision for Germany, capitalism. But this whole side over here is communist. And it's an awkward position for this West Berlin because, yeah, they're capitalist and they're Allied controlled, but everywhere around them here is still Soviet controlled Germany. It is a strange setup, to say the least. So tension begins to grow between, the U.S. and Great Britain/U.S. and the Soviet Union. Previously, Winston Churchill was kind of the mediator between the U.S. and the Soviets. Like him and Stalin got along well enough during World War II, excuse me. But after World War II, Churchill starts to see the Soviet Union for what it is, a communist dictatorship that threatens their own sovereignty. So Churchill coins the term Iron Curtain. He claims that all those Eastern European countries that the Soviets now have all this influence over have created this impenetrable Iron Curtain. Not that anyone would ever want to invade the Soviet Union, but now they're using all these countries as a shield and forcing them to abide by Soviet lifestyles. And this phrase, which would be used throughout the rest of the Cold War, it's really coined during a speech that Winston Churchill gives while he's visiting the U.S. He gives it at a college in Fulton, Missouri, a small college, I think it's Westminster College in Fulton, Missouri. He says, from Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic. Those are places in Northern Europe to Southern Europe. An Iron Curtain has descended across the continent. Now, if we were in a classroom, I'd show the video, but that's essentially just what he says. And he describes this as a, corrupt boundary that the Soviets have created against the rest of the world. And at first, it wasn't well received. Like, people thought Churchill was being sensitive or, a worrywart, at least in the U.S. But eventually, we come around to the fact that, oh, crap, the Soviets are kind of scary. And they are building this superpower. As Americans, we're so used to being the ones that control and being the threatening one that when someone else does it, it really, really worries us. And that's exactly what happens with the Soviets. So President Truman of the United States, now that FDR has passed, Truman is now president. He writes a piece of foreign policy known as the Truman Doctrine. The Truman Doctrine was a partial plea to Congress, but also just a formal declaration of, we are going to fight communism with everything we have. But it was a plea to Congress to help countries that are fighting communism, whether that be with money or with military power. He was asking Congress to help out these countries that are in danger of falling to communism. specifically at that time, Greece and Turkey, they were both fighting some communist influence. Now, Turkey was more just in an argument with the Soviet Union over access to like trade ports. So, and they had a little bit of communist influence, but they didn't have that big of a threat of communism. Greece, on the other hand, had a communist political party that was rising to power. And after World War II, they actually took power in Greece. And the British were actually the original country that was in fighting the communist insurgents. But then Great Britain found out how broke they are and how much money they lost after fighting World War II, that they asked Truman in the U.S., hey, could you come tag us out? Can you step in and help? Because we need to leave, and if we do, communism is probably going to take over Greece. So the U.S. provides very, very little military help, but they do provide quite a bit of financial help. All in all, the Truman Doctrine provides about $400 million worth of assistance to both, combined to both Turkey and Greece, most of it going to Greece. But it does end up kicking out the Greek Communist Party, and Greece remains democratic and capitalist for the most part. So in that sense, this was a successful move, but the Truman Doctrine sets the tone for, American foreign policy. Like, it sets the tone for how they are going to deal with communism in the Soviet Union. So in this, we have the American foreign policy, which I'm going to say that a lot. Foreign policy. It's their strategy for things outside of the country, of the U.S. The two main ways that we judge a president are on foreign policy and domestic policy. Domestic policy is what they do in matters here at home, here in the U.S. What's your domestic policy on like laws that you're enforcing on the people? How do you handle things here in America? Foreign policy is how we handle ourselves with other countries. So in this case, in world history, we're obviously going to talk about 90% of the time foreign policy. So in this case, our foreign policy was known as containment. America's goal was to stop the spread of communism, to contain it, to keep it from growing. And think about it like the coronavirus. We're trying to stop the spread of it. You're going to ask, maybe your first thought is, why not just stop communism? We have to stop the spread of it first. You can't just eliminate it as it's growing. Just like the virus. You can't stop coronavirus. You can't end it. You have to stop the spread of it first. That's why we're doing all these measures, these social distancings to, we're talking a little bit about vaccines, but that's still a ways away. A vaccine right now wouldn't do anything because it's already currently spreading. You can't give a vaccine in the middle of a spread. You have to stop the spread and then protect the people. Here we're trying to stop the spread of communism, and then once we isolate it, once we get it to where it's weak, then we can completely eliminate it. That was the initial goal of communism, because it's spreading fast. You may think it's at this point, communism, let's say 1950. Communism in 1950 was 31 years old. It was established in the Soviet Union was created in about 1919, and with it, communism. And 31 years may seem like quite a bit to you guys, but overall, the whole portrait of history, 31 years is nothing. It goes from an idea in a book to now it is the main principle of arguably the most powerful country in the world, and one of the most influential. So seeing it spread across the globe was conceivable. Like that was a very believable, that was a very possible event, was it spread. And B, it was horrifying to non-communists. It scared the daylights out of us, especially here in America. The thought of communism terrified us. And our policy, our domestic policy to communism in America was very, very aggressive. You'll learn more about that next year. And the reason why we found it to be so threatening, why we thought communism to be so invasive, is because, and Truman coined this, we believed in the domino theory, or the domino effect. Think of a row of dominoes. You knock the first one down, the rest of them, if they're all in the line, are also going to fall down. All it takes is that first one to start the chain. We believe that when one country falls to communism, then it'll only be a matter of time before others do. Communism will spread quickly, just like capitalism and democracy did. The U.S. starts, Democratic Republic in 1776, and by 1804, that's spread overseas to France, and then that spreads throughout Europe. And within 100 years, a majority of the world is some form of democracy or republic. Like that's how fast this stuff can spread. And we saw communism in the same light. It's going to spread. So now we get to our essential question. Why was American foreign policy to contain communism and not to end it? I spoke extensively on this, so you should have the answer. Why was our policy to contain it and not to end it? So that's where we'll end today. I'll have the essential question assignment up on Classroom for you to answer this. Again, we'll go all 5 days this week, and you'll just add each question each day, and then on Friday, you'll turn it in. So that's today's lecture. I'm going to get super into this. Like, I love the Cold War. I love talking about democracy versus dictatorship. I love talking about capitalism versus communism. It's going to get intense. Like, this was just the start of it. This was the mild part. We're talking about passing bills and diplomatic theories. Eventually, we're going to get to nuclear standoffs. We're going to get to worldwide panics and massacres. We will get to that stuff soon, but I got to lay the groundwork first. I've got to get you guys up to speed on what some of this stuff means. So, but we'll stop there today. If you have any questions, please do email me. I'll try and get those grades in here pretty soon. But there will be no Zoom meeting today. We will have one on Thursday, but not today. And I will see you guys next time.